Welcome to part one of making a do-it-yourself at-home silicone rubber mold so that you can pour waxes, pour resin, or whatever. I got all this stuff here from Walmart for, I don't know, 15, 20 bucks maybe. Silicone caulking. It must say Silicone 1 on it. Silicone 2 will not work. Caulking gun, a couple of bucks. Some kind of container if you have one around your house to hold water. Some dish soap, a couple of pie tins to catch excess water, and I got this shop towel from Walmart for like 3 bucks. The other thing, let's talk safety. So you can see here I've got a fan, open window. I'm going to turn that on. That is going to cut down on the noxious fumes that are in here. I've got an overhead fan. We're going to get a lot of air movement through here. If you don't have a place like this, you can do this in your bathroom if it's cold outside, if your bathroom has an exhaust, just so long as you got a lot of air movement. And if it is nice outside, go outside. This is a great thing to do outside. Lots of ventilation out there. All you need is light and good ventilation. But regardless of where I make this mold, I'm probably going to let this mold cure outside. As it's curing, it's off-gassing a lot of those fumes, that kind of vinegary smell that comes from silicone. And so it's just better to let it cure outside. The colder it is outside, the longer it's going to take to cure. But you'll be able to tell that right away when you touch it the next morning. But usually it's overnight. So let's get into it. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to kick my caulking gun. I've got this little handy thing. Punch it, cut my tip off of here. Take this and puncture a couple of times the membrane that is protecting this. Now my silicone is ready to go. I'm going to add some dish soap to this water. Doesn't need to be a lot, and we're not trying to make it foamy. We just want to get that slippery. The water should be not hot, not cold, just basically kind of room temperature, or cooler, slightly cooler than that. I'm going to always squeeze this underneath the surface of the water. You see that noodle coming out there. Squeezing that, and then I break it off, right? And now we're going to collect it very gently. We sometimes can give it a second or two to start. Like I said, what's happening, the surface is curing under the water because of the water. So we can give it a second to do that if we want. Now I'm going to take all those noodles and start to collect them into a little ball like this. Now, if you get any of this on your hands at all, you have to perfectly, like I got a little bit stuck, you have to clean your hands because the silicone won't stick to anything except for itself. So you have to thoroughly clean any of that off. That's why I have this little thing here. Thoroughly clean any of that off because otherwise it'll just continue to stick. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this a little bit. And I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to make this into a little noodle here. I could make it into a little patty too, but I like doing it in strips. And then I'm going to take that, and what you're trying to do is pat it. You're going to keep wetting your hands so that they don't get wet, so they don't get sticky. Any of that stuff that sticks on you, you got to get it off immediately, otherwise it'll keep sticking. I'm using the clearness of the silicone to be able to judge how thick to make this. And my goal is to push any air out as I move along. So what I'm trying to do is push any air out, and then when I get to the end of the noodle where I think it's going to be pretty thin, what I'm going to do is then push the edge of the silicone down into this really, really thin edge. That's going to make it so that when I put another one and overlap it, which you'll see me do here in a second, that there won't be too much of a noticeable edge. I do that all the way around. And I keep having to wet my hands so that they don't stick to the silicone. But like I said, silicone is a really weird material. It's unlike most glues that need dry and heat. Silicone needs cool and damp. It cures actually from the moisture in the air. So by squeezing it underwater, and I'm sitting right next to this thing, and I can tell you, there's almost no smell at all of silicone. You see though why I need my pie tin. It's really collecting a lot of water. So now I've got that really, really thin edge. I've got another little noodle. And again, you gotta keep your hands wet while you're doing this. I've got another little noodle, and I'm just gonna start it right on the edge and overlap. So these are kind of overlapping like scales, I guess you could say. And again, I'm pushing it, kind of rolling it over the surface. I'm trying to push any air out in front of it. And I'm trying to go for an even thickness. Anytime I feel it start to stick with my fingers, I really keep my hands wet. That's why I have this pie tin and this towel to catch all the extra water. Going for an even coating, and anywhere where it's getting thin, or get it running out along that edge, I will thin it out so that the next layer will overlap and there'll be very little seams. When I'm making this, you have to pretend as if you're picking up, I don't know, like a little goldfish or a baby bird or something out of that bucket of water. If you're too rough with it, it will stick to your hands, and once it starts to stick, that's it. You're done. You're just gonna keep sticking and you end up with this giant mess. Okay, so now that we've got it pretty much covered all the way around, what we need to think about now is where the parting line is going to go. We're going to make a two-part mother mold to hold all this together, because otherwise when we cut it apart, it's going to be all flobbery. So you got to think about how you're going to part it. You wouldn't want a two-part mold coming apart like this. It'd be too grippy. This seems like a pretty easy way. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a parting line by getting a little noodle, turning it into a little longer noodle, and we're going to add it to make a little fin right where we're going to part it. So I think through all of this stuff before I start. Where's my parting line going to be? And I want to make it not too lumpy. I want to make it an actual fin, because this is sort of where the mother mold is going to get clamped together to grip. I'm looking down on it to make sure that there's no undercuts on either side of this fin. That half of the mold that's going to be the mother mold will just be able to come off super easy like that. And again, I'm looking to make sure when I make this fin, as I'm pushing it along and making it, I want it to be a smooth transition into the body of the mold, no little undercuts. Anywhere where there's little bumpy undercuts or any little crevices or anything, the plaster for the mother mold will stick into that, and then it's going to make it difficult to take the mold apart without ripping apart your waxes later on when you're making waxes. Like I said, you can split this stuff, but the inside's going to be gooey, and so you got to be careful that you don't get it stuck to yourself. This is always the hardest, trickiest part, right down here. I'm just going to manipulate it right into the other fin. It doesn't matter if it's sitting in water. It will remarkably still cure. Again, what this fin is for is that, so later on, when I make my plaster mother mold, it has a place to clamp it together and lock. This is where I'm going to cut the mold so that I can peel it open, and I need something to pinch on that cut so that it doesn't slide around inside the mold. So that's what the fin is going to end up doing for us later on after we make our mother mold. But we're almost done here. One more addition, and then we'll take a closer look. So there you have it. That is the silicone mold made out of caulking silicone. So there you have it. That is stage one. We're making a silicone rubber mold at home. Now, a couple little details. If there are any spots that appear to be thin, you can easily fill those in by just adding. Like I said, this stuff will add to itself even after it's cured. So actually, if you get to a point in this where you're like, oh, I can't keep going, I run out of time, you gotta go do something else, some other household chores or whatever, you can stop, you can come back, and you can finish later on. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I love the clear stuff, because I can see there's a few places here that are a little thin. And so if I wanted to, before I put this outside to cure, I could easily add more silicone to it, or I could even do it the next day. So anyway, that's part one of DIY at home mold making with a silicone caulking. Remember, silicone 1. Come back next time. We'll be making a plaster mother mold that will hold this together using some plaster bandage gauze. The next part, we'll be cutting it open, and we'll be showing you how to safely make wax positives from this rubber mold at home on your stovetop. All right, stay safe, stay home. We'll see you soon.